Oh, hey, hi, it's Side-Eye. I didn't see you there. You see, being the professional I am, I've been conducting deep literary research in order to get the analysis of Scarlet and Violet's story just right. That's right. I've been studying all the classics, such as One Piece and the fucking road. Look, I may or may not be the most qualified to speak on every deep theme and influence the story of Gen 9 has to offer, but it's a goddamn kids game, so let's just stop wasting time and get into it.
Now let me start this off by saying I was kind of hesitant to dedicate an entire video to the story of this game in the first place. I mean, who cares about the stories in Pokemon games, really? But where I eventually landed is that there's still a lot of merit in analyzing these narratives, simple as they may be, especially if we take a wider look at the franchise as a whole. One particular aspect I want to focus on is how these stories have kind of stumbled in trying to get more ambitious as time has gone on. I don't want to frame all these narratives as bad, but it's important to see where they could have improved. Take Gen 5 for example. The whole setup for Team Plasma and Getsis promised a more mature Pokemon story that took itself seriously, only for it to leave us with a ton of missed potential. Personally, I don't think the writing team at Game Freak necessarily does mature all that well, and that's not because it's a series made for children. Plenty of kid-targeted media tackles mature themes well. It's just that many of the attempts Pokemon has done in the past have fallen flat on its face to me. In my opinion, the series' strength has always been in its characters more than anything. Like, I've always been a fan of Looker's weird shenanigans, for example. There's so many characters across the franchise that I love that have little to no plot relevance whatsoever. Ideally, my perfect Pokemon plot would be one that was character focused and had a bunch of fun personalities that bounced off each other. This was one thing that I thought Gen 7 really excelled in. The problem in those games was that the story often got in the way and was really intrusive to the pace of the game. Gen 8 was Gen 8, and then Legends Arceus, which I thought was one of the weakest they had ever done, despite the change in format. Though, I do want to add an addendum to my take on Legends Arceus' story. I received a great comment on my Legends video that described how much of its story is tied to actual Japanese history, specifically how Imperial Japan colonized the separatist democratic state of Izo to eventually turn it into what we now know as Hokkaido, and the parallels that exist within Legends Arceus' story to this real event. While I still think the quality of the writing in general in that game leaves much to be desired, this comment really did put much of what confused me about it into perspective. And in retrospect, I kind of regret glossing over much of the finer details in that video. So, going into Scarlet and Violet, I would really like to stress that I'm a dumb American, so I may not have all the cultural background to fully understand what Game Freak may have been going for. Welcome to Paldea. Okay, let's skip through all this traditional stuff. So, no sleepy countryside, personality-less mother, yada yada. You're the new student at a prestigious new academy, which is conveniently a school dedicated solely to the study of Pokemon. Can't get an engineering degree, but you can sure as hell get your master's in corefish studies. And as a part of your program, each student is assigned an independent study project, which is to explore the region in order to find one's treasure, which is a fancy way of saying go out and do shit. Now, at the outset, this setup does seem a bit more open-ended for a Pokemon game. You see students talking about how they're gonna photograph Pokemon, collect them, cook with them, etc. So you can kind of see Game Freak gesturing towards the idea that different people have different treasures, i.e. not just Pokemon battling. But, spoilers, it basically does boil down to you becoming a master of Pokemon battling, but with a few extra steps this time. Let me explain. The story is split between three main sections: Victory Road, following your main rival Nemona; Path of Legends, following your not-so-main rival Arven; and Starfall Street, which follows this mysterious person who goes by the alias Cassiopeia. And since it's the most familiar concept, let's tackle the Victory Road storyline first. Now, as far as the wider plot of this third of the story, it's the most straightforward and familiar to those who have played a Pokemon game before. You fight 8 gym leaders and then take on the Elite Four to become champion in the region. So I'm just gonna literally throw all that in the trash to talk exclusively about Nemona. She's Scarlet and Violet's main rival, and I believe the first female main rival. And while I'm here, and I promise you I don't want to dwell on this too long, I want to touch on how weird people are with Pokemon rivals. I feel like I always see people say stuff like, I miss the days when Pokemon rivals were assholes who spit on me and kicked me down the stairs and fuck my wife, unlike all these nice rivals nowadays. And I always sit there in bewilderment like, you're just thinking about Blue and Silver. Those were the only two rivals in the entire series that acted that way. And arguably, Silver doesn't even fit that description. He's an edgy dickhead when you meet him, yes, but his entire character arc in Gen 2 is that he learns to channel his anger into something positive, rather than just lashing out at the world. It's always bugged me that the entire view of rivals in Pokemon has been colored by the personality of two, arguably only one of the initial rivals in the series. I promise you guys, there's a lot of room to make a compelling rival that doesn't involve them being a screaming asshole the entire time. Take Nemona for example, the toxic positivity queen. Much like other rivals, she's got an intense passion for Pokemon battling. But this time, they really turned it up to 11. Like, this girl loves Pokemon battling to an almost psychotic degree. Before you even set foot on your adventure, Nemona has been a Paldean champion for quite a while, and basically nerfs herself so she can grow alongside you in your journey. She's supportive to the point of suffocation. Every action she takes over the course of the game is in service to you becoming a better Pokemon trainer so she can have a worthy rival to battle. I almost want to criticize her character for being so one note, but I think the game does a pretty good job at showing the cracks in her armor every once in a while. Through her dialogue, it becomes pretty clear that Nemona doesn't have many other people to connect with, or much else going on in her life due to her being so passionate over this one thing that she dedicates herself to fully. I think the writers were trying to say something about the loneliness that can come from hypercompetence in any one field. And I believe that theme tracks with the last few rivals they've written. Hop, especially. In Sword and Shield, Hop was also this ball of Omega positivity on the outside. But that was just a smokescreen for the major sense of inferiority he felt comparing himself to his brother. Both Nemona and Hop embody the fear of stagnation in different ways, and I think that's a fascinating angle to write a character like this from. We've all seen the happy-go-lucky friend-type character in a bunch of other media, but Pokemon for these last couple generations have deconstructed that trope in such a cool way, and I think this theme is a much more interesting way to tackle a rival, compared to them just being a dickhead. And I don't think that's given enough credit. So good job, Nemona, for being the surprisingly deep character you are. Just, 6 feet that way. You know what? Make it 10, actually. Clingy bit. Oh! What's that sound? Is that what I think it is? It may just be. That's right. You've requested it. You've waited for it. Now it's time for the character whose design and personality I like, but don't have much to say about, lightning round. Let's start off with the school staff. Clavel. He's the director of the academy, and literally the first character you interact with in the entire game. He has a pretty important role at the start of your adventure, but for some reason he just disappears for most of the game. I really wish we saw him more often. Jacques. He's your homeroom teacher, and since the actual professor is MIA for the entire game, he takes the traditional role that the professor usually fills. He designed Paldea's Pokedex, so you take him to get your progress checked. I like his carefree attitude. Miriam. She's the school nurse who's implied to be a former Nurse Joy. Her little side arc is legitimately kinda sweet. Rhyvort. Another one of my favorite character designs. I love the lore drops you get from her. Moving on to the Team Star leaders. Aerie. Definitely one of the cooler designs in the game. Her fight is up there with being one of the hardest for me. I failed multiple times trying to beat her. Mela. I initially wasn't sold on her big ass boots, but that damn walk animation saved it for me.
Oh my god, the way she walks. Oh my god, that's fucking great.
Generally, I wasn't the biggest fan of the gym leaders in S&V, but a couple did stand out for me. Rhyme. I can't believe it took this long to get a hip-hop inspired gym leader in the series, especially considering many others have had musical themes in the past. Rhyme has a cool design, and I love that her gym challenge is a cipher. She has cool interactions with her sister as well. Larry. Of all the side characters in S&V, Larry definitely seems to be the fan favorite, and it's not hard to see why. His monotone demeanor and apathetic attitude contrast well with all the other wacky personalities in the game. Pokemon battling is just a boring white-collar job to this guy. And we all love a quiet quitting king, don't we? But that apparently doesn't stop Larry from being a great trainer, because he's also a member of the Elite Four, which may be one of the strongest Elite Fours probably ever. Despite their fraud leader, the Elite Four in S&V are an interesting rogues gallery of personalities. Other than Larry, we have Poppy, who despite being 9 years old, is one of the strongest trainers in the region. There's just something inherently funny about one of your final challenges being this little girl in a bonnet, especially contrasted with the other three. Like, who let this happen? Rika! She's notable because her signature Pokemon is Clodsire, so of course I had to love her. She also just has one of the coolest drips in the entire game. Almost makes up for the fact that she's an assistant to a Hassel! Probably my favorite character in the game. I love how emotionally invested he is in your journey, and how he's constantly cheering you on over the course of the game. You know, for a game all about being part of an academy, and learning things from professors, Hassel seems to be one of the only characters who actually mentors your character throughout the game, and he's there at damn near every step giving you advice. He also should have been champion, goddammit. It would have been such a full circle moment. He's even a dragon trainer, for God's sake. Anyways, Hassel also teaches art classes at the academy that you can take of your own volition. In fact, there's a surprising amount of bonus cutscenes and character interactions you can experience by taking these classes, and they're all completely optional. None of these classes have any mind-blowing reveals in them or anything, but they add a ton of cool flavor dialogue and lore on top of some useful in-game rewards by taking them. I really appreciate Game Freak for putting these in here. It shows that they really believed in the school setting and didn't just use it as a simple backdrop. Case in point, the second of the 3 storylines in S&V, Starfall Street, which focuses on Team Star, a group of delinquent students. A mysterious hacker by the name of Cassiopeia tasks you with disbanding Team Star by raiding each of their bases and taking down the leader. Thankfully, you're not alone, as you have Penny, a hacker working for Operation Starfall who is definitely not plot relevant at all, as well as this totally ordinary new student named Clive who is there to investigate with you. Hey, does Clive look a little familiar to anyone else? Or is it just me? Ah well, as you go through each of the Team Star bases, you slowly gain more insight into how they were formed. You find out that although each leader rebelled against the Academy for their own reasons, they're all unified in their hatred of bullying. As it turns out, Team Star was initially formed to protect and give a family to victims of bullying, but after some time, that defensiveness ended up isolating them from the rest of society, leading them to gain their edgy reputation. After you defeat all the Team Star leaders, Cassiopeia reveals themselves as a big boss behind Team Star, being the founding member. As they tell it, Team Star has strayed far from their initial purpose, as all the leaders used to be friends with Cassiopeia. They want what's best for them. Cassiopeia then challenges you to a final battle back on school grounds. And as we approach the school, we see Clive as he reveals something truly unexpected. That he was Director Clavel the entire time. Okay, so we can all agree. Red Wedding, Sixth Sense, Clavel's reveal, the usual suspects? Okay, glad we're all on the same page. But that's not all, because Clavel also reveals that he was Cassiopeia the entire time.
That's just fucking stupid. What is this, a kid's game? Did you really expect me to fall for that?
Yeah, after you beat him in a surprisingly tough battle, he reveals that he doesn't actually know who Cassiopeia is. But he wanted to take care of it himself because he didn't want a student to solve a problem that was the failure of the school system to begin with. Clavel then leads you to confront Cassiopeia yourself, and when you arrive, the mysterious figure finally makes themselves known. As it turns out, Penny was Cassiopeia the entire time.
Yeah, okay.
Penny expresses guilt over Team Star's corruption, and somehow you beating her in a Pokemon fight is gonna make her disband Team Star, even though she wants to do that in the first place. Anyway, it's not important, because after you defeat her, All the key members of Team Star come out to greet Penny in what is legitimately a very heartwarming moment. And not to derail too much here, but this scene is where I really started to question why these games don't have voice acting at this point. I mean, look at this cutscene. It looks great. Unlike the rest of the game. You're telling me that they could afford motion capture, but not voice acting. Anyway, in the end, all the former Team Star leaders come back to the academy to assimilate back into school life and face consequences for their actions. And Clavel apologizes for failing them. And that's Starfall Street. And to be honest, it's probably my least favorite of the storylines. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton I like about it. I do like how it touches on the cycle of harm victims of bullying can fall into, and the institutional failings that bring victims to that state to begin with. And I'll always have a soft spot for any type of found family story. But the writing is kind of a mess. Specifically with Penny. I get that she's supposed to be a portrayal of mental illness, so it makes sense that not all of her decisions would be 100% lucid, but her motivations are so flimsy. I've also outlined that the gameplay portion of this segment is also not my favorite. Hey, so complete non sequitur. I really love the Legendary's role in this game. Traditionally, the box Legendary is relegated to the end of the game as a sort of final boss. While there's nothing inherently wrong with this, it's gotten incredibly stale and predictable over the years. Maybe you see the Legendary pop up a couple times over the course of the game, you get its lore and background, and at the end, you face it in an epic final battle, even though you just catch it in a Master Ball turn 1. Sword and Shield kind of switched it up by having the box Legendary fight alongside you in the final encounter for a change, but the process ended up being more or less the same. But from the outset in S&V, the box Legendary takes on a much different role. Early on, you come across Koraidon in a weakened state, and after feeding and helping it get back on its feet, it becomes your companion for the entirety of the game. It's there for your entire journey, in cutscenes, at picnics, and you ride it all across the region. It's effectively your 7th party member. I feel like a broken record, but again, I am floored by Game Freak's willingness to switch up something that is such a time-honored tradition at this point, and have it work as well as it does. I felt much more of a connection to Koraidon than any other box Legendary in the past, because they were an actual character and companion I interacted with over the course of the game. I legitimately cared for this guy. Something I really can't say about Yveltal, especially since it's lost all of its power and you spend the entire game gaining its strength back. Which brings us to our third and final main storyline in S&V, Path of Legends, also known as the most generic thing to call anything in a video game ever. The storyline follows Arven, a student with a knack for cooking on a mission to heal his sick Mabostiff. Also, he's the professor's son. Also, I haven't talked about the professor yet. Shit. So, Professor Seda / Turo, depending on what version you're playing. They're the professor of this game's region, but they serve a bit of a different role than past professors. You see, they're absent for pretty much the whole game, under the guise of nondescript and totally not at all suspicious research. I'll get more into the professor when we get to the finale, but for the purposes of Arven's storyline, their absence establishes a sense of abandonment and closed offness from the rest of the world in his character, as he comes off as very emotionally distant.
Just guys being dudes.
And you only start gaining his trust after helping him track down the elusive Herba Mystica, a mystical herb protected by 5 Titan Pokemon. He needs each of these arcane additives to heal his trusty Mabostiff back to health, after it suffered an almost fatal injury from another Pokemon. Slowly, over time, you see Arven's Mabostiff gain its strength back, and these scenes are some of my favorite in the entire game. You can see both Arven's desperation and hope increase after each one, and it's legitimately compelling. His partner means the world to him, and I got kind of emotional when Mabostiff gained its full strength back. I can't say the last time I was this invested in a Pokemon character's motivation before. I also love the parallel stories of healing in the storyline. As Mabostiff's condition improves, so does Arven's trust in you, and by extension, other people. It's very simple, but effective and sweet. But that's not all, because at the end of Arven's storyline, you get a call from the professor, where their bum ass speaks to their child for the first time in God knows how long, to ask Arven for a favor.
Really refreshing to see a deadbeat parent in a Pokemon game. Definitely don't have enough of those.
You see, Arven is the only person that can access their lab, and they want you and him to go there for a mysterious reason. And what you find there is something so reality-shattering that it— Whoa! Hold your horses. Let's slow down for a second. Before we get to the grand finale, I want to touch on a couple things. Now, all throughout these 3 storylines, you can tackle them in any order you please. You can do a couple gyms, a Titan Pokemon, a few more gyms, all of the raids at once, or any combination of these objectives. And speaking from personal experience, never once did I ever feel like any of the story segments or dialogue overstayed their welcome or felt like padding. I was honestly engaged during all 3 of these storylines, simple as they may be. I cannot overstate how much of a gulf there is between the way Gen 9 handles its storytelling compared to other generations, even if you compare it to its direct predecessor, Legends Arceus. Although it was technically the most open Pokemon game at the time, it was strangely traditional when it came to its plot linearity, and I think that hurt it in the long run. Scarlet and Violet's structure doesn't just help it in a gameplay sense. The way it disperses its story objectives makes the plot way more digestible. You're no longer bombarded with cutscenes out of nowhere, and you're fully prepared when you're getting into a story section. Again, I feel like I need to highlight that Game Freak came up with a unique solution to one of the series' long-standing problems with this game. And it's also cool how all 3 of these storylines naturally come together thematically. What started as 3 separate individuals isolated in the pursuit of one thing coalesces into one story of how togetherness and healing through bonding is what we as humans truly need. And that's all the more reinforced in the game's final chapter, The Way Home. Going back to the lab, we find out that the professor has been at the deepest part of Paldea, located in a great crater in the middle of the map named Area Zero for the entire game. They've been conducting research down there, and they need your help for the final steps.
And adding 2 counts of child endangerment to the rap sheet.
And make that 4, since Penny and Nemona join you as one final showing of the bonds you've made over the course of your journey. Man, I love this cutscene. Why doesn't the rest of the game look like this? As you explore Area Zero, a strange land teeming with terrestrial energy and paradox Pokemon, you make a few interesting discoveries. The first of which concerns the paradox Pokemon themselves, which turn out to be Pokemon taken from different points in time, all part of the professor's time machine experiments. Also, the professor's been doing time machine experiments with their time machine that they built themselves. You also find out that the legendary you have is a permutation of the Pokemon Cyclizar taken out of its time period, and that there's a second one roaming around somewhere in the area. As you go deeper into Area Zero, your party has some pretty cool dialogue where they connect about their families, pasts, and generally open up and commiserate with each other. Their exchanges are surprisingly heartwarming, and I kind of wish there was a bit more of it through the entire game, but it's also kind of nice to see all 3 of these characters interacting with each other at the end. Kind of gives a full circle kind of feel. And as you get to the final lab at the bottom of Area Zero, the professor hits you with the biggest reveal in the entire game, that they're an AI construct that took the professor's place after they died in a brutal attack years ago. The same incident that injured Arven's Mabostiff.
Didn't realize I was writing a eulogy this entire time.
Well, color me surprised. Not only is there an actual confirmed death in a Pokemon game, but also consequences for a character's actions. Up to this point, all we've been shown about the professor was that they were a neglectful parent that was conducting dangerous research that could, at best, endanger the nearby ecosystem, and at worst, threaten the entire region with no repercussions at all. But this reveal reframes the entire thing. As the AI professor tells you, they're deeply regretful of what they did, and only wish for you to help them destroy the time machine that they spent their life developing. Still doesn't excuse the shit they did, but better late than never, I guess. You then enter the bitrate destroying room where the time machine is located, with everything you need to shut it down. One issue though, the AI professor is hard programmed to attack anybody trying to destroy the time machine, as it has the battle data of every Paldean champion downloaded into its memory.
Well, if the last one we face is anything to go off of, I think we'll be fine.
So anyway, you beat her and destroy the time machine. The AI professor has a sweet moment with their not child. Game over. Everybody go home. We saved the day. Okay, that's not entirely it. You see, the professor installed one last failsafe. You remember that other legendary the professor brought from the time machine? Well, turns out it's the final line of defense. And it's much scarier and fully powered than the one you've been hanging out with the entire game. Well, that'll be no problem. Let me just toss out my trusty partner Pokemon now. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so apparently the lab system has a fucking EMP that disables all Pokeballs. Don't know why they didn't use that in the first place, but okay. Quick! Use a Cherry Berry! Well, shit, my Master Roll game, it didn't pan out. I'm all out of ideas. Unless, you know, the entire game, Koraidon has been selectable in the party member for seemingly no reason. I thought they just put him there to be cute, which he is, but what if... What? Yo! Oh my god! Let's go! Let's go! And then it all comes down to this. Your Koraidon versus the Rogue One. Who will win? It's you, because this is a scripted fight that you can't lose. But, man, that doesn't take away from the fact that this is still really awesome. The visuals, the music, your friends cheering you on. Now, this is one hell of a finale. I know Toby Fox made the music for this section, but did he also write it? This is the most Undertale-ass sequence I've ever seen in a game, and it's so out of line from the rest of the series. After you beat Koraidon, the AI professor gives a surprisingly touching speech acknowledging each character for overcoming their obstacles, wrapping all the themes together well, before giving one last goodbye to their, creator's son? Listen, the AI has the professor's memories apparently, so it's not weird. And destroying the time machine for good. The group celebrates their victory, even though Arven just watched their parent die for the second time, and have one final cute and well-animated scene together as they walk home together. Resident Evil 2 Remake ending. Credits! Hey, was it just me or is that really good? That was bar none the best finale to a Pokemon game. Period. The cinematics, the character dialogue, how it perfectly brung together all the themes of the three storylines into one epic conclusion. It was plainly great. It's not the greatest story I've seen in a game by a long shot. Hell, not even in a JRPG on Switch that came out that year. Like I mentioned earlier, some character motivations are real shaky, and the entire experience suffers from a lack of voice acting. Again, all of this animation, and you couldn't get Matt Mercer in the booth for an afternoon. But for a Pokemon game, I'm not sure I could even ask for more. For the first time in ever, I have very few notes for the plot of a Pokemon game. I cared for pretty much every character. I found none of them annoying. I never felt like I was being bombarded with cutscenes out of nowhere. I was thoroughly entertained by the story of a Pokemon game. I just really have to let that set in for a while. While we can hem and haw about so many aspects of Scarlet and Violet, and which ones they got wrong, and which ones they got even wronger, the story is one aspect that I don't find many cracks in the armor with. Like, yes, the graphics are terrible, and maybe you don't like terrestrialization, or the way the open world is laid out, but I can't really see someone saying that the plot and characters of S&V are anything worse than inoffensive. Because, man, if you found it annoying in this game, boy, are you not gonna like the way 99% of other JRPGs handle it. And I think I'll leave it at that. I'll spare you the usual prophesizing of how this connects to every aspect of the game and the state of the games industry as a whole this time, and just give the story of Scarlet and Violet a hearty thumbs up.
Well, that concludes this chapter of our story, and we finally have an answer to our question. Can a 25-year-old man properly review the story of Scarlet and Violet? Of course I can. This game was made for fucking 9-year-olds. Give me something harder next time. We're wrapping this shit up next video. Hey, Arven. Forget about your fucking mom dying. Look at this sick-ass form.